Welcome to my channel Techify with Adil. So today in our video we will be discussing the migrating options for Azure data. So the previous videos we have discussed about Azure Storage accounts and storage services and all the details about it. So now in this video we will be discussing the migrating options. So before we start, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe my channel, like, share, and you can watch all the Azure fundamentals related videos. So here we will start with the migrating options. So Azure supports both real-time migration of infrastructure of applications and data using Azure Migrate, as well as asynchronous migration of data using Azure Data Box. So if you need synchronously updating migrating the data, so we have an option called Azure Migrate, and if it's okay to do asynchronous migration, then we can use Azure Data Box. So first we will discuss about Azure Migrate. For Azure Migrate is a service that helps to migrate from an on-premises environment to the cloud. So Azure Migrate functions as a hub to help you manage the assessment and migration of your on-premises data center to Azure. It provides the following, so they can help you with the assessment and migrate the data. So it provides unified migration platform, so it's a single portal to start, run, track your migration to Azure. Then range of tools is for it has a range of tools for assessment and migration as well. So Azure Migrate tools include Azure Migrate Discovery and Assessment and Azure Migrate Server Migration. So Azure Migrate also integrates with other Azure services and tools, and with independent software vendor offerings as well. So assessment and migration. So in the Azure Migrate Hub, you can assess and migrate your on-premises infrastructure to Azure. So in addition to working with tools from ISVs, the Azure Migrate Hub also includes the following tools to help with the migration. So Azure Migrate Discovery and Assessment, Azure Migrate Server Migration, then Data Migrate Assistant, Azure Database Migration Service, Azure App Service Migration Assistant, and Azure Data Box. Okay, so what the tools includes in the discovery and assessment is, so discovery and assessment on premises server running on VMware, Hyper-V and physical servers in preparation for migration of Azure. So that's a discovery and assessment tool. Then for Azure Migrate Server Migration, migrate VMs, Hyper VMs, then physical servers and other virtualization servers and public cloud VMs to Azure. So it can be done in these two parts. Then Data Migrate Assistant is a standalone tool to assess SQL servers. So it helps pinpoint potential problems blocking migration. It identifies unsupported features, new features that can benefit you after migration, and the right path for database migration. So because SQL is a database server, so usually we'll have trouble in migrating a database, so because we might have a lot of connections and a lot of settings over it, so features and some features may not be feasible with Azure. So all this can be pre-assessed, and any new feature that can be implemented so that to make our data run or analytics run more efficiently, can all this be assessed before the migration. So Azure Database Migration Service migrate on-premises database to Azure VMs running SQL Server, Azure SQL Database, or SQL managed instances. Then Azure App Service Migrate Assistant. So this one is a standalone tool to access on-premises websites for migration to Azure App Services. Use Migration Assistant to migrate .NET and PHP web apps to Azure. Same like the Data Migration Assistant, this App Service Migration Assistant is mostly used for on-premises website to migrate to Azure App Service. So next is Azure Database. So use Azure Azure Data Box products to move large amounts of offline data to Azure, which is an asynchronous data transfer. So Azure Data Box is a physical migration service that helps transfer large amounts of data in a quick, inexpensive and reliable way. The secure data transfer is accelerated by shipping you a proprietary data box storage device that has a maximum usable storage capacity of 80 terabytes. So this is an important thing to remember, 80 terabytes. The data box is transported to and from the data center via regional carrier. A rugged case protects and secures the data from damage during the transit. You can order the data box device via Azure portal to import and export data from the Azure. Once the device is received, you can quickly set it up using the local web UI and connect it to your network. Once you are finished transferring the data, either into or out of Azure, like either importing or or exporting the data, simply return the data box. So if you are transferring the data into Azure, the data is automatically uploaded once the Microsoft receives the data box back. The entire process is tracked end to end by data box service in the Azure portal. So we can consider this as very similar to our external hard disk. So the data box is received, then we connect the data box and import all the data to it. Once imported, then again the carrier helps to take the data box to the data center, then it's being uploaded to the cloud. So use cases. So database is ideally to transfer the data sizes larger than 40 TBs in scenarios with no limited network connectivity. The data movement can be one-time, periodic, or an initial bulk data transfer followed by periodical transfers. So now we see where is the scenarios where the data box can be used to import data to Azure. So it's a one-time migration when a large amount of data is in on-premise and you're just one time you're migrating to Azure. So moving a media library from offline tapes into Azure to create an online media library. So migrating your VM, form, SQL Server and applications to Azure. Moving historical data to Azure for in-depth analysis and reporting using HD Insight. Initial bulk transfer and periodical uploads. When large amount of data is generated periodically and needs to be moved to Azure. So when it is like more than 40 TB, so you can have a periodical uploads using the Azure Data Box. So next we will see the scenarios where data box can be used to export the data from Azure. So like disaster recovery, when you have a copy of data in the Azure restored to an on-premise network. So in a typical disaster recovery scenario, we will be using the export option. Then security requirements, when you need to be able to export data out of your Azure due to government or security requirements. Then migrate back to on-premises or to another cloud service provider. Once the data from your import order is uploaded to Azure, the disks on the device are wiped clean in accordance with NIST 800-88R1 standards. For an export order, the disks are erased once the device reaches the Azure data center. So because we are copying the data to the Azure Data Box, so it's your data is outside your environment. So once the task has been completed, so it's going to be wiped clean with no recovery option from that data box. So here because here for the disaster recovery scenario, usually like many companies will have a setup like they will have their on-premises file server or other servers, then their backup will be onto the Azure. So it will have like daily backup, periodical backup of the data to the Azure. So whenever there needs to be a recovery, like not only just disaster recovery, even when you want to move it to another location which you cannot do the physical server moving or some other purposes, then you can use this Azure Data Box export data from the Azure. So just the data box will provide you the data, it will be brought to the on premises, then you can copy it over, then send your data box back. Very similar to holding your external hard disk everywhere. So next will be the identity options. So here, in addition to the large scale migration using the services Azure Migrate and Azure Data Box, Azure also has tools to help you move and interact with individual files and small file groups. So the Azure Migrate and Azure Data Box, we were dealing about like full set of data, like large amount of data. So if you're going to use a small file groups or small individual files, we no need to go for a big service that supports very like 40 TB of data and more. So here we have other tools like Azure Copy, Azure Storage Explorer, and Azure File Sync. So Azure Copy is a command line utility that can use to copy blobs or files to or from the storage account. With Azure Copy, you can upload files, download files, copy files between storage accounts, and even synchronize files. Azure Copy can even be configured to work with other cloud providers to help move files back and forth between the clouds. So it's like a command line interface like robocopy. Usually we use the command prompt to do the robocopy to copy the data from one location to another location. Similarly, this AzCopy is your Azure command line utility that can be used to copy the blobs and files. Then Azure Storage Explorer. So Azure Storage Explorer is a standalone app that provides a graphical interface to manage files and blobs in your Azure Storage account. So it works on Windows, Mac, and Linux as well operating systems, and uses Azure Copy on the backend to perform all the file and blob management tasks. With Storage Explorer, you can upload to Azure, download from Azure, and move between storage accounts. So it's Azure Storage Explorer is an app. Azure File Sync is a tool that lets you centralize your files shares in Azure files and keep the flexibility, performance, and compatibility of a Windows file server. So it's almost like turning your Windows file server into a miniature content delivery network. So once you install Azure File Sync on your local Windows server, it will automatically stay bidirectional sync with your files in the Azure. So first is Azure Copy, it's a command line utility. Then the Azure Storage Explorer is an app. Then Azure File Sync is a tool that keeps bidirectional sync with the files in the Azure. With Azure File Sync, what all the other things you can do is, so use any protocols that available on Windows Server to access your data locally, including SMB, NFS, FTPS and all. We can use all these protocols to access the data. Then have many caches as you need across the world. Replace a failed local server by installing Azure File Sync on a new server in the same data center. So configure cloud tiering so the most frequent accessed files are replicated locally, while infrequently accessed files are kept in the cloud until requested. So it helps to configure the cloud tiering. Cloud tiering is like another important topic with your exam point of view, and also with the normal as an admin of Azure admin, we need to know detail about the Azure configuring cloud tiering.